Hello and welcome back to Esoteric Ebb. We don't have any updates to the session notes, as always, because we didn't actually do anything. But this time, we gotta speak to Snore. I also noticed we have this now, which I think was sitting on him previously. We're gonna ignore this, we're gonna pretend we didn't see it, we're gonna speak to Snore. Hello, Snore. He waves a hand in front of him. Life is pain. Now, what do you want? Can you give me some mind healing? Of course. I am, however, a bit swamped in work right now. I will get you a booked slot. I have time after the election. You should come visit then. Can you make time now? No, I'm afraid I cannot. Truth be told, I am very overworked. I'm struggling with a certain topic. He makes a noise that might have once been a cough. What? I am focusing on a specific idea of civetics. The idea that two opposite faces of your ego, masculine and feminine. But I just can't seem to get past a certain obstacle. Explain. You see, there is a work called The Book of the Mind, in my opinion, Civetics' masterpiece in the figurative sense. Is it like some secret book hidden deep in some dungeon? Oh no, I own several copies. There is a rare edition of this book which contains a rumoured so-called final foreword by Civetics himself. In this foreword, he apparently reveals a revelation about his categorization of the psyche, specifically on the topic of gender. Truly eldritch knowledge. Might be nothing, but it would be highly interesting to get my grubby hands on it. He leans in and whispers, and more importantly, it would bring me great pleasure to know how much Civetics would be spinning in whatever Thazinian mass grave he's buried in if he knew a halfling like myself was pioneering in his footsteps. Ho ho ho. He wasn't a fan? Like most humans of his era, he was very, let's say, humanity first. Snore leans back in his chair. This final 6th edition of the book, it was only printed in 10 copies. The publisher then hiked up the price in order to sell it to collectors. Those collectors then spent the last 3 decades using these copies as a form of investment, making sure to keep the content of that foreword a tightly guarded secret. Well, if it's about gender, then it's better to keep it a secret. Ho ho ho. You fear the unveiling of weird gender bullshit? That is good. Fear means there's something interesting to find. So what, you want me to find this rare book? He nods. I drank a bit too much the other night, and in my desperation I paid a diviner to cast Locate Object for me. I didn't expect anything, and it was very expensive. However, she actually found it. A copy of the 6th edition Book of the Mind is here, very close to Waterlane View. And she even told me the exact direction. He points to the floor, about 40 meters straight down. Meters? Right. That is something like 100 feet. 150 maybe. Sorry, the diviner was a freestrider. You know what they're like in Reed, silly decimal people. Is in the city below? Yes, exactly. And you trust this diviner? Yes, well, trust might be a bit of a strong word. But she was connected to the freestriders, and while they are ruthless capitalists, they would not keep a scam artist around. Or if they did, it would be very funny, of course. What's the name of this diviner? Lisa, I believe. He sniffs. She used to have a hut on top of the Freestrider building. It wandered away, I think. Wandered? He makes little walking motions with his fingers. Skedoodled, as they say. An esoteric house? She seemed kind. I hope she stops working for those fucking parasites. Well, this sounds like a quest. Sure, why not? So many side quests, Snell mutters to himself. Delve into the dangerous tunnels below and get me that book. Don't get yourself killed. In exchange, I will, well, what the fuck kind of reward do you want? I want you to teach me how to be a man. No, impossible. I have no idea myself. Pick something different. I want you to heal. Actually, you swear a lot. Yes, fuck you. Life is pain. Get over it. I want you to heal my broken mind. Impossible. No one can fix another's mind. I can promise support, but no guarantee. Choose something else. I don't know. Do you have a magic item or something? He shrugs. I have books in droves. You know what, he says and snaps his fingers. The book itself is expensive and probably magical in some sense. Get me the book, let me take a look at the foreword, and you keep the book afterwards. That's still a quest, right? So you can't offer me something else? Actually, you know what? That sounds wonderful. I love quests. I am not an expert in what kind of weird shit is down there, but the city below is dangerous, so don't wander blindly. Meek. No, underground, good. Meek will warn Master in time for traps. Good luck, Cleric. I want to inquire about this folk spirit. Imagine, if you will, the origin of our stories. All stories? Yes, all of them. As sentient folk, we clearly have the base ability to come up with random ideas and turn them into emotionally resonant tales. Tales that explore the condition of life itself and make us feel many things. But an interesting thing happens if one were to study the core parts of these stories. That even if we look at stories crafted in entirely different bands, separate isolated tribes, or even in worlds outside Jor itself, there's overlap. Should I just let him speak? Just repeat the last thing he said. That'll make you sound smart. Overlap? Indeed. Humans who live in the remote mountains of Im have the same repeated tropes in their foundational myths as humans in reeds. Same for halflings. The Stormbloods of Kargamesh have the same variations as my people in Fordnip, despite being separated in esoteric evolution by at least 10 millennia. It's as if every folk is haunted by a spirit, like an unconscious collective dream of concepts and ideas that follow us. Even when these separate folk originate from entirely different worlds, could you imagine? Two folk arrive through two separate gates of Jor. They are alien to one another, culturally, spiritually, biologically. Yet they share those core myths. That is what I am saying. Don't let him rant anymore, please. That is very interesting. Isn't it? Most importantly, it's provable. How is it provable? Reproducibility, analysis. Cultures and folk who had no contact with one another, even originating from different worlds, both have the same core myths, narrative traits, archetypes, repeated tropes. It's the same method used when uncovering ancient dead languages, using common denominators to narrow down similarities and differences. He adjusts his mustache. Now, there hasn't been that much reproducibility yet from my peers, but I'm still working on getting other scholars in on this topic. Is there a folk spirit that's better than the others? Better means nothing. There's so much weight put into making one greater in some perspective than others that it's just a ridiculous game of dick swinging. Of course, I also hate this horrid idea that every culture is amazing and wonderful and, you know, everyone is holding hands and dancing together. No, every culture is equally terrible. But they are all specialized. These symbols we produce are clothed in meaning based on lived experiences. If a human living in the frozen tundra will derive and require much different practical uses than those of those core myths than a man living in the harsh deserts, let me try that again. A human living in the frozen tundra will derive and require much different practical uses of those core myths than a man living in the harsh deserts. Yet each folk type has its own fundamental traits that these symbols represent. That's very interesting. It is a lot of junk with nuggets of gold, that much I will say. So what happens when two folk types merge? Ah, yes. He lifts a finger. No clue. It's even harder to pinpoint due to the nature of merging cultures. In cases like humans and dwarves here in Norvik, there's more data, but not enough to say anything of note. But it seems to me like the folk spirit remains pure in a sense, in one direction or the other. For example, humans can obviously reproduce with dwarves, but the offspring is always aesthetically and biologically speaking very human, which does not make sense biologically. We are, scientifically speaking, different species. Dogs do not breed with cats, do they? The same effect can be seen in most functional folk mixed breeding. Logically, it should not be. Evolutionary adaptation dictates the creation of a mixture, not a one-sided creature. So it is theorized to be some type of powerful esoteric effect that allows this reproduction to take place. In the scholarly community, we call it the OSO effect, the one-sided offspring. Okay. You know a lot about this topic, huh? Once again, I'm afraid this is all coming from experiments performed by arcanists. Horrifically so. So one side is always dominant, huh? Not biologically speaking, but esoterically, yes, subjectively so. There's a list of this hierarchy in some textbooks. It is a pretty taboo topic, as you might imagine. But doesn't that mean that the dwarves would eventually stop existing in Norvik and just become human? That is a good question. If two people live alongside one another for a long enough time and they reproduce with one another equally, but the offspring are aesthetically human, then yes, eventually there would only be one people and it would be people who look human. However, there is a big factor in charge here, and that is the elusive and enticing topic of mating preference. There is not much proven data I can point to, but if you allow me to speculate, then I would say only a minority of the population of any tribe will ever have a strict preference for mating outside of that tribe. Without a basic assumption like that, I do not believe the tribe itself would remain intact enough for civilization to emerge. So, in the case of dwarves in Norvik, I do not believe the two tribes can ever truly merge. Cooperate, yes. Cohabitate, of course. Even mingle and date and crossbreed, absolutely, why not? But merge, no, impossible. Of course, this assumption ignores the OSO effect, so it feels a bit crackpotty. Take it as you wish. Okay, well that makes sense. So if you say like 10% of the dwarves every generation are going to intermingle with humans, like that means that 10% go and become human. Like that line becomes human, but the other 90% then all breed with each other, and then that creates more than that 10% who are lost. So you're not actually losing any dwarves. There's just more humans. Okay. Anyway, and you think the folk spirit follows the one-sided offspring? Maybe. I have not done enough work to say anything for sure. Nor have I been peer-reviewed, nor am I a very sane or stable individual. He grins. I think I understand now. The goblin crosses his arms, ready to hear your comment. The halfling scholar leans back in his armchair. Well, let's see. You know what? I think you've got something cool cooking here. Oh, you do. He gives you a quick nod. I would not spend my old age here if I did not agree to, in some deep sense. He sniffs. Thank you for listening to my rant, Cleric. You as well, my goblin friend. You're welcome? Okay, you're an expert in alignment, huh? Somewhat. I wrote my masterpiece on the subject. That should account for somewhat of an understanding on the subject, but not enough, never enough. He sniffs. Can you change your alignment? Of course, any creature is capable of leaning in the axis depending on their day-to-day actions. So, devils are just lazy then? He scratches his cheek. A bit more complicated than that. Look, like all things, it's messy. Let's say you're lawful evil. I'm not? Sure, but for the sake of argument, let's hypothetically assume you are, but I'm not. A moment of silence from the halfling scholar seems to indicate that he is contemplating whether or not you are capable of entertaining hypothetical reasoning at all, which from your statements here you are at least very much indicating you are not. Let us pretend you are. You find that being labelled as evil is bad for your business, or your work prospects as one might, so you choose to donate a large sum of money to a charity that will inevitably help thousands. You might even save some lives with those spent coins. But you said I was evil. Yes, but you are trying not to be. In this case, you performed an objectively good, selfless action for evil, selfish reasons. So what happens next? He points at you. Nothing. Nothing, but I did a good thing. You remain lawful evil. But let's change the parameters. Instead, you are a lawful evil man who genuinely wishes to repent, to pay for the many evil things you've done in your life before. If this man performs a selfless action with the intention of selflessness, then all of a sudden it will begin a shift in his alignment. What if the outcome is really, really big, I say, pretending still not to get it? It does not matter in the slightest. This effect has obviously been studied for centuries. It's aptly named the Alignment Intent Studies. I personally received my scholarship through studying delusional intent. We gathered a large amount of very mentally unwell people, mostly from local prisons and post-war reads, who truly believed in a very different worldview than most others. For example, this one man was certain that he had to kill his fellow man or the world would end, one murder a week. An extreme delusion. However, any detection spell showed him to be neutral good, and he felt terrible about all the murders he had committed. He was not selfish, in fact he was more selfless than most, willing to perform acts that horrified him in order to save us all. The objective outcome of his actions mattered not, no more than the outcomes of the actions of a person under a charm spell. Okay, that's interesting, yeah. So, you can do an evil action, but if your intent was to do it for a good reason, then you are good, via the alignment spell that checks. Huh. Okay, so what if you're not smart enough to understand your actions? That is what we call the sentience line. It's not exact. Animals, for example, are true neutral by default. Any that is not a pure beast, but rather affected by esoteric forces on some level. That's the theory, at least. But imagine a man who loses enough of his mental faculties to be considered a beast, no longer living in a world of good or evil. Let's say he was chaotic good beforehand. What happens to his alignment? Does he suddenly turn true neutral? Is he stuck at chaotic good? Or does he somehow slide towards true neutral? That's because that's another thing. There is no known way to perform a neutral action. All actions are either some level of selfish, selfless, lawful, or chaotic, on a wide spectrum. But you can never just move towards the center, it's just not allowed. How do you end up with your alignment to begin with? Are you born with it? No, all creatures are born true neutral, and all reported metrics show babies are unable to perform alignment shifts until the age of about 3 to 7, depending on the folk. But interestingly enough, it's shown that most people will only perform 1 or 2 alignment shifts in their entire lifetime. He scratches his cheek and sniffs a couple of times. During adolescence. After that, less than a tenth of folk will ever shift again. That is fairly substantially verified data as well. So essentially, despite having free will, folks will always lean towards a natural behavior over time. So we're slaves to our natures? On a broad scale, when looking at data, yes. But it was Civitix who wrote, "There is no honor in branding and naturally selfless man is good. There is all honor in a selfless monster, or selfish monster receiving the same title. Remember that. There is no honor in branding a naturally selfless man as good. There is all honor in a selfless monster, or selfish monster receiving that same title." Okay. So I'm just working this out in my head. So if you are naturally selfless, right? It's in your nature to be selfless, then then having this person who is naturally selfless gain the title of good isn't that honorable, because it didn't take as much work for the selfish monster becoming good. Okay. It's the credit for overcoming your nature. That's what they're going for here. Okay. What's the difference between alignment and personality? Not much correlation on paper. Studies on personality show that there is overlap. Conscientious folk tend to be more lawful. Neurotic and open folk tend to be more good to a minor degree, but we're still talking about unverified and very minor correlations. Wait, does that mean everything I do is branded as good, evil, chaotic, or lawful? Even this, that I'm saying right now? In some small sense, yes. The very act of speaking, no matter what you say, will always give you very, very small points in any direction. Although, could you imagine trying to keep track of it all? It would be insane, so no person would ever go to such lengths. No need to keep track of stuff like that, it will only drive you mad. So you can will yourself into changing your alignment. In theory, yes. I've made my decision. You... what? Oh. So what do I want to be? Well, it's an interesting question. What do we want to be? Well, we know we're not evil. We've clarified we're not evil. So I don't want to be evil. Do we want to be good? Well, obviously we want to be good, right? Because we're not evil. And if we were neutral, we'd be closer to evil than good, so we have to be good. So, if we're good, are we chaotic? Well, no, obviously not. Neutral? No. We're lawful. We follow the law, because the law was written by Earth, and we follow Earth. So obviously, without a doubt, I'm lawful good. It's the only thing I could be. That is not how it works, Cleric. You'd have to be incredibly deluded, and I mean absolutely living in your own world, mentally unstable in order to simply decide what your alignment were, and to actually get an outcome from it. But I suppose it can't hurt. Good luck being... sorry, what did you choose again? It was, yes? Lawful good, of course. Give until your bones hit the pavement. Neutral goods. That is what keeps your innards from cramping at night, to know you are not a burden upon the world. Lawful evil. Structure with you on top, obviously. You're not gonna like it, but the goal is to end up on top, right? Win every conversation? And you're not really moving along the axis of law, so you're neutral evil. Though seriously, whatever you do not tell that to the halfling. You should just opt out. Lawful good. Right, and lawful. Or right, good and lawful. He nods. Good luck with that, Cleric. What does good mean? Oh, what a question. I cannot offer a universal answer. That is impossible, of course. But from the data, there are a few ways of distilling the essence of goodness. For example, the amount of good you are is directly correlated with the amount of time you spend inside your own mind worrying about how much pain you've inflicted upon the world. And of course, practically, it also means performing selfless actions. Performative sacrifice is done entirely for the purpose of helping others, instant goodness. What does evil mean? Most people would say they know it when they see it, but practically it means selfishness. For example, a person with a mental pathology that disallows compassion and empathy, making them naturally only hold care for no one but their own self, that is naturally an evil individual. But at the same time, we are all basically evil, egotistical, disgusting creatures in the end. Also, you notice every time that the ego is mentioned, it's always underlined. That's very interesting. Anyway, if push comes to shove, as they say, since obviously all of us have a part that is focused more on our own survival rather than the survival of the foreign. Otherwise, we would not be alive in an evolutionary sense. What does chaotic mean? Now, that can be difficult to parse sometimes. We've done some experiments to try and distill the exact meaning of it. It's difficult, mainly because who decides what is law? Gods? Your local government? Village elder? No, what is chaos and order is universal. A law can be chaotic, as contradictory as it sounds. But if its dictation brings chaos into the world... But generally, what we've found is that there are a few common rules that chaos follows. Breaking down structures, whether that is a building or a hierarchy of society, lies, in fact any action that purposefully goes against a known truth is considered chaotic, and of course randomization, rolling a dice is an inherently chaotic act, as is any form of gambling. That's actually one of the easier ways of measuring chaotic behavior. We used to go to the local gambling parlor. Good times. What does lawful mean? Lawful actions can be difficult to perform. It's all about building. crafting buildings for one, or hierarchies of structure, keeping families intact and orderly organizations. As well as following the truth, there have been many tyrannical, lawful governments throughout history that quickly succumbed to chaos due to their warping of the truth itself. But then again, if you can convince people to enter another reality, if you will, where a lie is true, then all of a sudden the folk in that reality will be lawful despite working and living in a lie. It can get very convoluted and fascinating. Who decides what any of this means? There are theories. Some say it's the god, some say it's Jor himself who controls the parameters in this world of his. Some believe it's simply inscribed into the universe as absolute law. Could we change it? Who knows? Maybe you can, maybe you cannot. Does alignment matter? Oh, not in any real way. It can be a tool, but if you cannot read it properly, seeing a man branded with chaotic evil means nothing. But if you learn, it can be used to understand folk better. In this, you can statistically expect an evil person to act in their own interest, and you can expect a good person to act in the interest of others. A smart man can use this to his advantage, which is also an evil act, I believe. Funny how it goes. Why isn't it illegal to be evil? Might as well make it illegal to be sentient. Branding it as evil might be the core problem there. There were arcanists who created alternate naming conventions for alignments, altruism and egotism for example, but it did not catch on, as they say. But everyone has to be evil sometimes. Imagine your family is starving alongside two other families who are also starving. The other families are smaller folk who only need half as much food. Would you feed your own family or sacrifice them to feed the other two families? The only correct option: feed your family except yourself. Use your own food to feed the children of the other families. And die horribly. Obviously I'm going to choose number 4, we were just told to. I'd feed my family except myself, my own food would go to the children of the other families. That, among all options, is, I would argue, a purely selfless action indeed. But what exactly is objectively considered in alignment terms in a scenario? Is it selfish to care for your own people before others? Has it more to do with the exact number of people who live or die, suffer or prosper, in a purely utilitarian perspective? These questions have all been asked before and have arguably been answered. From what we can see, especially looking at the data collected from horrendously unethical experiments performed by the Arcanist scholars, it's just about intention. If a man chooses to focus on his own family but feels really bad about the other starving families, then he will become more good than another man who does not think of the others suffering at all. The proximity rule states that the emotional distance between yourself and the target determines the level of selfishness. If you sacrifice your life to protect your family, that's more selfish than if you sacrifice your life for a stranger. The latter is more good. So in the end, a genuinely selfless person will always have a much easier time being branded with good than a naturally selfish one. He scratches his hairy eyebrows simultaneously. By the gods, I talk too much. Make me stop. That's enough about alignment for now. Okay, good. He wipes some sweat off of his brow. Alright, we're getting a lot of interesting conversations here. But what about gender swapping? The great fluidity of bodily life. There is a bunch of laws about it, polymorphic stuff, I don't really care. Really, it's more interesting to ask, what is the spectrum Jor set up for us? When someone drinks one of these hip mirror gender potions, as they're called, they don't really give you an ideal body. Like, you'd imagine a kind of trashy, unkempt born male would drink it and turn into a hot young woman, but that is not the case. The esoteric nature of it does create a sort of perfect mirror of the original drinker. So if the drinker was a kind of slouchy and not so fit, the opposite gender version would retain those features along with any aesthetic unfortunalities. He laughs. I would obviously be a not so great looking woman myself if I were to guess. But anyway, one of the things our draconic Arcanist overlords did for us in the last era was discover and calculate the fact that this switch is absolutely not a binary. In biology, it somewhat makes sense. One either has or does not have the overarching male or female practicalities, tits or cock, you know? But when you look on the inside, in your mind, it turns out there is an entirely other calculation happening on the spectrum of masculinity to femininity, or vice versa. And this is no binary. While it is highly correlated with your body, it is not aligned exactly. That is how you have, I am sure you've met in your life, highly feminine men and highly masculine women. The more extreme ends here are absolutely statistical anomalies, but they are still very much real. I think I get it. Some men are weaker and some women are stronger. We say with no interest in what he's just said there. Ah, now you're applying the idea of weakness and strength to them as well, since women have less muscle mass, correct? Or right? The most interesting part is this mental gender spectrum state we all find ourselves on. They appear fixed. At some point during childhood, it is determined exactly where you find yourself, how manly or womanly you end up being as you grow up. And Jor, I do not believe he came up with this, I believe he simply modeled strings to follow the same patterns as the rest of reality. His structure allows us to see this precisely. When a person drinks a mirror gender potion, their physical binary existence is flipped, yes, but their mind? It does not move one bit. If you are a man, you drink the potion, you come out being a man in a woman's body. But what if you are the world's most feminine man? You'd be, you would be the world's most normal woman in a woman's body. Same with a masculine woman. She would become no different in mind and body from the average man if she drinks it. Our statistics show that something like 90% of people lie on the bodily correct side of the spectrum, and only a few percent are anywhere close to the average on the opposite side. So, while some bitch and moan about, oh, this is trickery and fakery if one were to switch out their bodily reality and so on, it seems to just be a question of some people wanting the bodily reality to conform to their position on the spectrum. Of course, some people do it just for kicks and boners, but I see that as just the spirit of curiosity and wonderful debauchery. And don't get me started on sexuality. That's an entirely separate but highly connected, of course, can of worms. Okay, that's quite an interesting way of explaining it. Yeah, this is very interesting. And I can't help but think of other games that have attempted the same type of narrative story that haven't quite managed to explain themselves in quite as concise is the wrong word, quite as eloquent a way, right? Like, I've seen other examples of games trying to explain this exact scenario, and it's very kind of heavy-handed. This is perfect. Like, I think this is pretty good. Anyway, now how are we going to ruin it by being the cleric? So I believe we should stay in the physical shape we're born into. Polymorphism is foul. People should apply their physical realities to align with their mental ones, as long as you're not hurting anyone. Or as a wizard, I believe you have the power to change reality. You should do it at your whim. Okay. So what would the cleric think? The cleric is gonna say number 1. I believe we should stay in the shape we were born into. Polymorphism is foul. Some would agree with you. I'm more of a, if you excuse my use of this vulgar term, liberal pragmatist. Whatever makes people happy without hurting others. But anyway, he sniffs while cleaning his glasses. So, how does death and resurrection work with all this stuff? What do you mean exactly? Can death change your nature? A frown spreads across his face. Necromancers in old arcane-era traditions did much study on the topic, and yes, death and subsequent resurrection can function as a reset for the mind in a way, but arguably no less than any other severe trauma. The data is hard to trust, however, so I will not say for sure. There is much study to do on the topic, and I am no expert. Is there a soul? The fuck do I know? He laughs. Ghosts exist, of course, as do wraiths and other foul undead spirit things. And there is much arcanist data on such things, like if a person is resurrected, their ghost ceased to be. That implies the ghost is the soul, right? But Speak with Dead does not. In fact, a ghost is technically able to ask questions to its own corpse. Very surreal. which implies the soul also leaves a conscious remnant of itself which is able to be animated through magic. And if a person is resurrected, even after very long periods of time, they will have no memory of their time as a free soul. Thus, there is evidence that the soul is not so much your personhood, that shit is all up in the brain from what we can see, but rather just some kind of divine spark, like a power source that wants to be one with the universe or your god. The Lich is specifically a creature who consumes these so-called souls for their own gain, which is not very common. The extraction of that magical spark is of course a horrid crime of metaphysical levels, since resurrection, rebirth, or unity with one's god is impossible at that point. But then again, back in the day it used to be common for mortals to sell their souls to various devils or aberrations. It seems like there absolutely is a soul. Probably yes. Can one spontaneously resurrect themselves? I've not heard of such a thing, but why not? Okay, I have other questions. Why don't you use magic in your mind healing? It does not work. Not the greatest arcanist could invent a spell capable of fixing mental unwellness. If you happen to find a cure mind spell, you would make a fucking fortune casting it on rich people around the coast. Although just the thought of such magic gives me a sort of ontological nightmare. What does it mean to have a cured mind? Did Jor or some outside god at some point decide what constitutes the wound of a mind? In the same way suffering is used to heal wounds of the physical? Pain equals negativity, that is universal. The universal indicator of the negative. Yes, when you heal a person, magic itself targets the source of the pain as a sort of bullseye for averting any harm, no matter the source or specific biology of the person. But what if one suffers from night terrors caused by some horrors of the past? Should a heal mind spell remove your ability to have night terrors, or should it remove their traumatic source of their traumatic source from your memory, or simply lessen your mental ability of neuroticism? Could the latter lead to a society without neurotic people? Would that also dampen other fears? What would Jor consider to be a good level of negative thoughts? It sends my mind spinning. Well, obviously, as a follower of Earth who is perfect, no negativity should be allowed. Everyone should just be happy. I know of arcanists who express similar sentiments. Then I retract my statement. The halfling leans back in the chair. No, the mind requires another method. One I and many others are attempting to untangle. We'll see if any of us are even remotely successful in this brain bullshit. What is love, and can you teach me? Love? He lets out a frustrated groan. Pure calamity, deadly and destructive. Its nature is just perverted and foul, because it is a complete surrender without idealization. To love is to accept, without proof or demands or conditions, this complete surrender to another, ridiculously risky. This guy's more fucked up than you are. So I shouldn't love? He shrugs. If you can, yes, of course you should not take such a risky bet. He takes a breath. Love is a completely unpredictable and dangerous encounter, and I have yet to meet a sentient folk who is not afflicted by it, and interestingly enough, I see no difference. It is universal elf love, halfling love, devil love. True love is always irrational. It is finding the perfect inside of the imperfect, and falling entirely into it, swallowed by it. Some folk might act it out in different ways, depending on their communal nature or biological urges. But if you are one of the few who does not need it, good, be happy. If you are not, then good luck, and may the gods bless your soul. Where did you say I should look for this book you need? We might as well ask again. He leans in. 120 feet, straight down in the city below. Okay. So let's move on to other stuff. What do you know about the tea shop, the one that exploded? Oh, horrific. He gestures wildly towards the rocky wall. Shit started shaking. It was as if the red rock of Tolstad itself was cracking, for half a second or so. So you were down here when it happened? Yes, I think I was asleep, but the sound awoke me. Did you go check it out? No, somebody told me later what it was like. I have work to do here. Did you hear anything about it? Rumors? You should not believe rumors, Cleric, but yes, I did hear some nasty stuff. Some people seem to think the owner did it himself since he is missing. Some others think the city did it since they printed a clear lie in the post. I've also heard people say that the Asgilists are responsible since it was their hideout, or that the Freestriders did it for the same reason, blowing up Asgilist opposition and so on. It's all bullshit, of course. I don't believe rumors. What do you think happened? He shrugs violently. I've got other questions. Okay, I'm going to ask him who he's voting for in the election. What do we think he's going to say? He is going to say... He's kind of a liberal, live and let live. I think he could be an Asgilist. He could be an agrarian. I don't know. He could be apolitical. What are you voting in the election? I am a filthy Asgilist. Ah, okay then. Why call it filthy? Have you ever seen a clean Asgilist? Oh ho. He laughs at his own joke. Joke. The green banner is flowing in a strange context here in this Republican wet dream of ours. Asgilism is supposed to be about abolishing the entire structure of hierarchy. That history is driven by economic struggles, specifically the clash between classes. Asgil's end goal was a classless, stateless society where everyone's equal. Looking at Norvikian Asgilists, it's clear to me they long ago let this goal slip past. Look at them. They are shaking hands with the establishment, trying to find a peaceful solution, as they say. They are simply becoming part of the establishment. True, a compromise with capitalism will always be all-consuming. Look, the hairy halfling mutters. Genuine change, true change, needs a truly revolutionary break with the existing order. There is no doubt about that. Incremental reforms, small changes within the capitalist system will always fail to address its fundamental contradictions and injustices. My time in Reeds made that clear to me. But always be wary of simplistic utopian visions. It is a path covered in corpses that leads to such blind idealism. So I will vote for this social democratic compromise. This handshake with capital. Then I'll go home and piss myself and die, dreaming the next generation will have the answers I do not. Any Asgilism is too much Asgilism. You should all be run out of the city. Yes, and back into the hole in the ground. Me, I suppose, I'd be forced back into my homeland in the rigid ice sheet surrounding Titbury. With a deep groan, he starts rubbing his hairy face. Workers unite, and unionization and guild powers, it's all well and good until it gets too loud. Make a bit too much noise, and the true powers quickly and efficiently drop this illusionary mask facade, the esoteric spell that tricks us into thinking they care, or that they are in any way Folklarian. Folkarian? So what about you, Cleric? Tell me, if not Asgilist, what are you voting? I'm voting for the party of Norvik. He laughs. Oh, say something nationalistic 12 times achievement, and it's an achievement of shiny stuff around the outside, which means it is not popular within the players of this game. Alright. He laughs. Fucking fascist. But good, be honourable and stand by your city and your dead god. But don't get upset when they sell out to the Freestriders afterwards. He sniffs. Now, for something else before I start ranting about the suffragette movement. Your companion glances at you. No, please, I really want to know what you think about the suffragettes. The halfling wags a finger at you. You're a brave man, Cleric. Thanks. Wink. Stop doing that, you can't even see it. Yeah, because I'm... okay. Didn't even register me that he wouldn't see it because we have the helmet on. Alright. When the first talks of an election began, it was, well, a late arcane era, about 30 years ago. In those early days, the suffragettes were mostly dwarven women. They had the backing of a few hardcore universal Asgilist sects that remained since the Great Project concluded. But when Earth died and talks of an election grew loud, the dwarven women had a hard time getting through. Both because of the less progressive Asgilists and, of course, the traditional cultural practices of the Earth folk. So the movement didn't kick into gear properly until, well, of course, human women decided to join. I like those. He nods. Statistically probable, yes. Mind you, this was after almost 2 decades of dwarven women pushing for universal suffrage. Within just a few years, with the voice of angry rich human women yelling and writing and protesting, the palace patriarchy gave in. That's the history lesson, but here's the part I'm fucking furious over. What? Those rich human women, do you know what happened to them? He waves his hand. I'll tell you, many of them are today's fascists. Can you imagine? They run an incredible campaign in order to get the right to vote, to break their chains of oppression, piss off the tyrannical men, smash the patriarchy and so on, all to throw their lot in with that very same traditionalist ideology. An ideology that clearly wants to, well of course, also just not have any voting going on at all, but specifically not allow women to vote. Well, again, as the cleric, maybe they realize the errors of their ways. What? The error in wanting to have a voice in society? A part of me thinks that it has to do with some sort of opportunism. These women are, these are women whose time in the spotlight ended once they won the right to vote. Suddenly, their entire platform of activism disappeared overnight. Even still, why nationalists? They realize that the homeland needs protection, surely. Perhaps there is some, if you don't mind me speculating wildly, some type of perverse psychosexual thing at play here. What? No, nationalism is a pure ideology. There is no sex involved. Or it is simply a question of class. It probably yes, probably. They are mostly a group of rich people. That would logically supersede their identity as women. If the rich human position in society is threatened, then they have more to lose as rich than as women. It's a complex topic, and I don't have the fucking time to think about it, even though I desperately want to figure it out. But that is just something I'm fascinated by, you know? The halfling rants about things he's trying to understand. He's able to capture an audience that way clearly. Anyway. Well, you're a halfling, right? Give me your thoughts on the Clanland ordeal. Ordeal? He scratches his nose and looks up into the air. He repeats. My homeland is a shell of broken people. The clans of my kin, especially those stuck under the occupation across the Golden Line, they are being systematically destroyed, step by step, as the Horde marches into Ascani lands. I read about that. The Golden Horde claimed a part of Ascan. A big chunk, yes. Then they put up their esoteric wall. He grunts. The Clanlands steal. This armistice was seen by many as a practical solution since only 2 clans were left to be enslaved and integrated as Horde tributaries. Clanlands, a term for the unified halfling states in Western Ascan. The official name is the Ford Nip Commonwealth, although many avoid this term as to not annoy the envoys of the Golden Horde. He slams his hand into the side of the chair. It is a band-aid. Celestials view time in centuries, while we see it in decades at best. Thus they can take one piece at a time with generational acceptance in between. It's the most clean method of genocide, one of radiant ghosts and insidious toxic love. What will happen to them? Tomorrow, nothing. In a decade, not much. Fortnite will still stand by the time I die in 30 or 40 years, but by the end of this new era, my homeland will surely be eradicated. That is my estimation. Did you live in the Clanlands? When the Golden Line was drawn, yes. It's not that interesting, but I was on the western side when it happened. There wasn't enough food to go around, so I pulled some strings to smuggle myself east. It's a whole story. I can't say much more. My clan, the Appledents, all live in Tipbury, so it's not some big personal tragedy on my part. It's more of a folkish destruction. A grander trauma, something generational, even if I was there to witness it. I imagine that you would feel something similar about the Coast War. That's actually extremely interesting. You could write a book on that. I have. Can't get it published though. No one wants to deal with legal threats from the Horde. Fascinating. Even in Norvik? Even in Norvik. Isn't there resistance in Fordnip? Of course, it's a whole damn mess. Ignoring the actual guerrilla resistance west of Line, there's been a massive rally around anti-celestial sentiment in the east. They have attempted sanctions with Norvik, VK, and even Ilum backing. There's even been coast-spanning outreach, all the way to Kargamesh, to build some type of coast-spanning halfling coalition. Nothing works. The Horde has a finger in most every trade port. They own land and hold strong ties to every regime. Even Norvik has not officially backed their neighbours. Without Earth, and with Lady Fair not so existing, they are, as the kids say, it's steamed. The kids do not say that. As you can imagine, the halfling population of the hills are not too happy about this, but what can they do? An Asgal victory might change things, but the Free Striders are in the celestial pockets, as are the Patriarchs. So yes, there is resistance, but as of yet, there is no practical way out of this frog being boiled, I'm afraid. He is correct. The Golden Horde is performing impeccably in this geopolitical play. Why do they want the clan land so badly? He waves at his hand. It is a basic resource conflict. Oh? Amber, you know, Electrum. Amber? The Commonwealth is the only reliable source of amber for the many esoteric use cases. Spell storing, item crafting, consecration, esoteric attunement. Is an extremely useful material, a powerful one. So it is really no wonder the Horde wants to expand their golden line. If Norvik was more reliant on amber as a resource, I'm sure they too would covet those hills. But trading with the halflings does not seem so different than trading with the Horde, at least not today. Are the Celestials influential in Norvik? Yes, they have a lot of soft power in trade mostly. The Horde ambassador is known to fling their contracts around like a devil in disguise, mostly to stop halfling-owned corporations from operating without major hassle. Any halfling would tell you the same. They luckily don't care for tiny clinics like my own, but... He sniffs. They will not stop in the material realm. They must go into the psychic as well. What? The Golden Horde, their annexation of land, is just the final step. Before that came many little crushings of thoughts and dreams and a tyranny of pure ideology. They shape perceptions to maintain control. That's all I wanted to ask. Yes, yes, he says and sniffs loudly. Well, I have some personal questions for you. Nothing too interesting there, he says and sniffs. I see no reason you would investigate an old halfling with nothing good to grant into the world. You seem interesting enough. Kind of you, but you are wrong. My work's the only thing that is interesting, I assure you. Fine. Keep your secrets, old man. That's all for now. Thank you, citizen. Well, I'm very happy that I didn't attempt to do that last time, because that was so much info. But it was all very interesting stuff. Now we're going to speak to the book. Oh, magical quill and paper. Actually, I think we're just going to steal it. Advantage against bureaucrats. Oh, okay. Tiny Dictator is what it's called. An unseen servant magically attuned to a feather, pencil, and paper. It will write down everything spoken within 10 feet. The content disappears off the page as it writes. The servant can follow commands to write down specific topics, take notes in certain style, or focus on a chosen person's words. They're very common in the halls of the palace, where words can ruin lives, or worse, careers. Ah, okay. Oh, I don't think we have an immediate use for it. Yeah, I don't think we have an immediate use. We could replace the esoteric pocket watch or something, but I'm kind of happy with it. Okay. Well, we haven't moved a single step, but yet at the same time we are ending the episode here. Thank you very much for watching. Next time, well, I guess we're going to do something else. I don't really know. We're going to go explore again. Thank you for watching. See you next time. Goodbye.